And rather than having it kind of perfectly float in the middle of this space, it's actually going to be cut off by the top of the eye. And so if it's helpful to you, I prefer almost just drawing the whole circle. And so that top eye is going to kind of come down, that eyelid's going to come down and cover part of it. The bottom of the iris just usually kind of just grazes that bottom lid. And again, this is subject on the individual. Some people have wider, more open eyes. Some people's eyes are a little bit softer. They come down a little bit lower. And then of course, depending on the facial expression, if someone's really surprised or someone's really tired, it's going to be different. And then once I've got that circle, I'm going to try and find my midpoint and place my pupil. And again, you can see I'm kind of loosely blocking it in. I'm going to stand back so I can see it a little better. And try and place it dead center. All right. So once I have my pupil placed in the center, now we're going to start talking a little bit about value and shape. So we have our eye, but now we need one of the kind of key elements that helps define it is that top lid, that kind of crease that kind of comes up and sort of follows the shape of the eye and comes down. Some people have like a little fold right here, so there's like two, but that second eyelid and blocking in light and shadow is going to help. In terms of placing the eyebrow, generally the eyebrow is about, if you take the height of the eye and bring it up, that's about the distance from the eyebrow to the eye, generally speaking. And an eyebrow is usually, it might start like right before the pupil. And to block it in, and again, depending on the individual, some people have, really long swooping eyebrows. It either ends kind of right here, if I were to draw a line up, or maybe extends a little bit farther past. And rather than draw every single strand of hair in the eyebrow, I'm actually going to take, in this case, the side of my pencil. Because an eyebrow, same idea, we're going to block it in with light and shadow. So I've got these sort of gestural marks to define the brow. And then they're usually a little darker on the bottom. So I might take my pencil and push in like a little darker value on the bottom and use a few gestural marks to imply the eyebrow hair rather than drawing every single hair. Usually kind of change direction right at the beginning. All right. And those are quick kind of immediate little marks. And then I might take my eraser and just like pick out a few little highlights in there too, where the light would hit the hair and kind of shine. All right, so I've got my eyebrow, and now we're gonna start building some value in the eye. And for handling this, because remember the eyeball itself is very round, and so there's still gonna be some value range in the spherical part of the eye. It's not gonna be just a pure white. So I'm going to start with the iris, and I'm sort of using these sort of radial pencil marks. You don't have to use the side of your pencil. You could draw it with, using just like the tip of your pencil as you normally would. I just find this helps me stay a little bit looser and gives me some interesting texture. if you think about the way that the iris is shaped, it's not one solid value the whole way through. And then that pupil is going to be darker. And then I might go in, usually the outside of the iris is a little bit darker, but we don't want it to be a heavy outline because that's going to feel kind of weird. So I'm just going to gesturally block in a few little areas to push in some of those darker moments rather than outlining. All right. So I've got this general shape. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push in, a little value right here in the corner. But we're still going to try and keep it pretty light. So if it starts to get away from you, don't worry about it. You can always just go back in and lift out with an eraser. And then inside the eye, that white, if you just have a little bit of pencil, you should be able to kind of just lightly, using your hand, push in just some of that value range. And already, I didn't apply any additional pencil. This is just how dark that the white of the eye got from what's kind of around it. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring out my eraser and I'm going to pick out the highlight. And this is really important. Having the highlight on the eye is what's going to make it feel really three-dimensional. If you don't block in that highlight, it's going to feel very flat. And I'm also lifting out a little bit of light where the white of the eye is, just so it's not such a heavy dark value. Again, there's going to be some value range in the white of the eye, but you don't want it to be, really dark. It's really a subtle amount of value that we're adding. All right. So now that I've got that shape and I've started to build value, we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to build a little bit more shadow here. It's usually darker as it gets kind of closer. Then it gets a little bit lighter, kind of at the peak of the eye right here because it protrudes the farthest, and it starts to get darker again. So I'm just pushing a little value in. Same with kind of right up here. It's usually a little darker. And then it kind of curves up. And then last but certainly not least, we're going to block in some eyelashes. Now, one thing that you'll frequently see is kind of like with the hair, I'll see eyelashes where people go in and they draw like each eyelash like this. Don't do that. First of all, it'll make you crazy. Second of all, it's going to look like they had a bad mascara day. So because hair falls in clumps, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to map the groupings of hair. And usually it's kind of thicker here. So you see I'm actually not drawing individual strands, I'm kind of blocking in a little bit of value. And it's usually a little bit shorter over here. Just not shorter in length, but just the way we see it optically, it doesn't come out as far. And so I'm starting to block in those shapes. And then I can start to take my pencil and flick out a little more loose, just a quick couple gestural marks. And of course, the longer you make them, the more feminine it's going to appear. And so you can see it's kind of darker at the base, closer to the lid, and then a little bit more gestural and organic feeling. And then for the bottom of the eye, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my eraser again and just lighten this. Because the bottom eyelid, there's that little, we kind of see the top part of it. And that's usually because it's a flat plane, catches highlights. So I'm gonna clean this up. And now I've got that bottom lid. And I can bring in my pencil and I'm just gonna lightly create a secondary line, really light, right? We don't want a hard outline. It's a soft gestural mark. And then because it's kind of curved in, it's usually going to be a little bit darker underneath. Again, this also depends on like the angle of the light source. And so now what we have is that part of the eyelid that we see, that kind of flat plane. And we can do the same thing we did at the top. We don't need to draw every eyelash, you'll kind of lose your mind. And because the eyelashes at the bottom are a little bit thinner, you don't need to go as crazy. And just start to block in a few gestural marks. And there we go. So that's a basic eye shape. Of course, you can keep building this, building more value, building more shadow, but this gives you the general idea of how to lightly start to draw an eye.